Welcome. Let's worship the Lord. My soul is a witness.
If you want to clap, it's like this.
My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness unto you, O Lord. My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness unto you, O Lord. Give me water, give me wine. Give me water, give me wine. My soul is a witness. 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 Oh, witness.
Get up and dance if you want to.
Water to wine.
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 My soul is a witness.
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 My soul is a witness. My soul
My soul
is
is
a
a
witness.
witness.
Oh, witness.
Oh, yeah.
Before I go.
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 My soul is a witness. 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 Witness.
Yeah, yeah.
Witness. Witness unto you, O Lord. Witness.
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 Oh, witness.
Witness unto you, O Lord. My soul is a witness.
My soul is a witness.
My soul is a witness.
My soul is a
My
witness.
soul is a witness.
My soul is a witness.
My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness unto you, O Lord.
Unto you, O Lord.
My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness. My soul is a witness unto you, O Lord. Amen.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever
You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. So bless the Lord, and bless the Lord, and bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. And bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Worship his holy name like never before. Oh my soul, worship your holy name. Oh, worship your holy name. I'll worship your holy name. Praise God.
Give me a second. I got to catch my breath. I was just sitting in the back looking at my notes, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm missing a page in my notes. So I'm pretty thankful that I live so far away and could just literally run over there right now. If you don't know, I live like across the street, so that's kind of funny. But it's always something. There's always something. Even as much as you can prepare, there's something always comes up. I know that those of you that are parents can attest to that even, when you plan everything perfectly, things come up, right? Anyways, well, just give me a second. My heart's all like beating so fast. I don't think I ran that fast in a while, so. Oh, we've all been there, right? Some point or another, we've wanted to get back in shape. I remember a few months ago, I still have a Facebook, if anybody in here has a Facebook, but back in my younger days, I used to post a lot of silly things on Facebook, and so one of the things that came up was a post I wrote that said, I'm beginning to think that working out isn't good for you because I just, ran my first mile and I'm pretty sure I can taste blood in my mouth and my heart's beating so fast. So maybe I will, delay the working out. But just funny, to see things you posted way back then. Anyways, let me try to see if I can get this off here. Okay. All right. Enough of my antics. Today we're going to be jumping in to Daniel 3, which is a little different because you're going to wonder, oh, you preached last week. You were in chapter 1, so, why are you in Daniel 3? Well, Daniel 2 is pretty eventful, but I really enjoy the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. Right. I was talking to one of you before service today, and I was thinking back about how Daniel 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is a story that most of you in here have read. You probably heard it, if you've grown up in the church, when you were pretty young. And then as you've grown older, you've heard it in a variety of different ways. But I was thinking about my first experience of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and VeggieTales came to mind. Anybody in here ever use VeggieTales in like Sunday school or watch those? Yes. So I was like, I'm trying to remember what the story was, the VeggieTale way. And all I could remember was that there was this, scary looking zucchini. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go back online and I'm going to look up, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego VeggieTale version. And sure enough, you have a big, scary zucchini who is King Nebuchadnezzar. And he has people that are working in his chocolate factory. And they're making these chocolate bunnies. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he's putting out on the line, we have to make this many bunnies, right? And then he's like, but I don't just like these small bunnies. I'm going to make this really big bunny, and I'm going to put it in the center, of my, shop. And at this time every day, I'm going to play music, and everybody that's working here, they're going to bow down to my chocolate bunny. And then he breaks out into song about, he's, chocolate bunnies and whatnot. But I was laughing because as a kid, I was just so disturbed by this big, scary man and why he was saying, you have to worship this big chocolate bunny. But it was impactful because I did remember the story. However, it's not exactly how it goes when you open up the Bible, because there's no chocolate bunnies, but there is a big, idol, like we'll get into, and a fiery furnace. So we got the main things there. And the great thing about, our Christian walk and our faith is that what may have started out as a story of King Nebuchadnezzar and the chocolate bunnies when I was just a kid, 30-something years later is, oh, wow, this is a lot more than chocolate bunnies. And I was thinking, that is so true, because, usually you don't see me up here because I'm hanging out way down yonder in the corner of the property with the kids here. And they're funny enough because, as much as you want to get to the deep stuff with these kids when they come to church, man, sometimes it's just about those chocolate bunnies, right? Actually, I was laughing because on Tuesday we meet and we hang out, and I do a thing with them called High Low Buffalo. And it's tell me something high, like that was good about your week. Tell me something that was low, and then tell me something buffalo, which is very random. And sure enough, they'll tell you a lot of different things. But a lot of times we don't get into the real meat of, our faith and how we're growing until we get into those relational pieces of I'm really interested in your buffalo, which is the craziest story about, you and your sister hanging out, doing this, jumping off that, all those things. And then we get to the time that we spend together and we can pray. And sometimes that prayer is just, Lord, just bless these kids. Pray that they grow and they know you more. And if we start out here, I pray that faith deepens over time and that there's many opportunities that they can grow and they can learn more about you, even if we're sitting here and we're talking about, buffaloes. But I was just impacted that my first encounter with our text today, Daniel 3, came way back when I was a young child myself, and I was invited to church by a girl that my mom babysat. And that kind of started my faith journey of being in Awanas and wanting to go to church and inviting my family. But all those things added up to wow, man, I've had the privilege of going to school and studying, and this is something I so love, that something so simple can be so impactful if we step back and we see where God has truly taken us. So as we start our time together in Daniel 3, the cool thing about this day and age is many of you have cell phones. If you don't, I will be very surprised. But there's apps on your cell phone that you can open up the Bible, and we're going to jump in. because Daniel 3 has a lot of verses in it and it's more of a narrative as a story, I'm going to get through the meat of it and then we'll jump into like the heart of what I really want you to get today. But please open up your app, or cool thing about this church is we have pews and I'm pretty sure there's Bibles in front of you, if not. So I'll give you a moment to just pull that out because I want you to follow along if you can, because it is a huge chunk of narrative today. So I'll give you a second. All right, so last week when many of you were here, we jumped into Daniel 1 when Israel's best and brightest young men were carried off into Babylon, and then they were put in King Nebuchadnezzar's somewhat university, where they were pretty much forced to learn all the things about this new country, this new people, the land that they're in now. So they were given the greatest education that you could get in Babylon. As we talked about last week, they were also offered the best foods from the king's table, but as we learned, that was a no-go. Daniel and his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to eat that food. We asked you politely, we've done this stuff. They were given permission to eat their own diet, and at the end of the 10 days of their testing, they were better off than their whole class. Not by their own efforts, because like I joked about, when you're eating veggies, you don't get super ripped and plump and all of that. You probably lose some weight, shed some pounds, but that was not what they were saying in that part of the text. So at the end of that, they are given positions throughout the kingdom, and they're seen, as the best, the top of their class. So in chapter 2, which I'm gonna skip over today, I'm just gonna give you a summary of it. Basically, King Nebuchadnezzar, he has a dream, and he goes to the astrologers, the dream interpreters, all of those in the kingdom, and he says, basically, I had this dream. Your job is now to tell me my dream. And so they're like, hey, this is not usually how it works. Usually you tell us what your dream is about, and then we go and we can look through, our dream interpretations, and we can gather all the information, and then we can present to you what we believe your dream is about. However, that's not what happened. So King Nebuchadnezzar, because we learned about last week that he's kind of an angry guy. When things don't go his way, he kind of throws a fit. So he says, no, you can't interpret my dream. All right, all of you, you're dead. So he sends out his people to go out to basically collect them all so that he'll kill them off. But they get to Daniel, and Daniel says, oh, please, let's take a break here. Let's be reasonable. Can you take me back to your king so I can talk to him? So Daniel's taken back to King Nebuchadnezzar, and he asks him, hey, would you give me the opportunity basically to go home and, pray, give me some time, I'll come back and I'm going to see if I can interpret your dream. So Daniel goes back home to his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he asks them, please, will you pray with me tonight that God would give me the interpretation of this dream, and so that, all of us will be spared. So they all pray. Daniel is given divine wisdom and discernment of what the dream is, and he goes back to King Nebuchadnezzar, and he's able to tell them what his dream was about. And his dream is about, this big, basically, I'm not going to call it, it's an idol. It's like I'm going to blank on the name of this. Not monument, but what is that word? Statue. Yes. So it's a statue, and each part of the statue is covered in a different metal, gold, brass, all the way down, and he gives the interpretation of this dream. So at the end of this interpretation, Nebuchadnezzar is like, yeah, thank you for interpreting this. I'm going to give you once again favor. You go out into the land, and then you do your business. So then we land in where we are today, which is Daniel chapter 3. So now you kind of have an understanding of where we're at with him and his friends. So in verse 1 it says, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, which is about 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. That's really tall and kind of really small in this sense. And we don't really know what this statue was, whether it was like a depiction of a god or if it was a depiction of like himself or an image of a Babylonian god. We don't really know. But he all of a sudden said, hey, I'm going to put up this image and I'm going to set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned all the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. So, the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. So, as I'm reading, you'll notice that I'm going to repeat pretty much long list of things. If you notice in these two verses, it was who was showing up to this dedication of this image, right? And the importance of that is that it's emphasizing that all of these people from all different, statuses and whatnot, and the higher ups, these officials, they're all here. It's not just, we have a few, nobodies. No, we have the best of everybody here, and it's for a reason, right? And so in verse 4 it says, Then the herald, which was the messenger of the king, loudly proclaimed, Nations and peoples of every language. Babylon conquered many lands and peoples, so that's why it says many nations and peoples of every language, because this is a big mix of people that are showing up to this. He says, This is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Think he's trying to make a point here? Right? Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, and all kinds of music, all the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worshiped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. See, this was not an act of spiritual worship. This was more of an act of obedience to the king, because there were so many nations and peoples, which meant that they would have worshiped many different gods. He was okay with that. He didn't have any problem with them worshiping their own gods, but he was emphasizing that, hey, when I tell you to bow down and do it as I say, you better do it, because I'm in power. I don't care who you worship, but you're in my land and you're going to do as I say. So, at this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. At this point, they don't name any names, but these astrologers are also the people in chapter 2 that King Nebuchadnezzar goes to and says, hey, tell me my dream, and they can't do it. So these are kind of jealous people, because the Jews, which Daniel and his friends, they're the ones who prayed, and they're the ones that were given the interpretation of the king's dream. So you have these jealous astrologers that come forward, and at first it's like they didn't name any names. It says denounce the Jews. They don't say Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, not yet. But they said to King Nebuchadnezzar, may the king live forever. This is where they're kind of like, oh, king, we just really love you. We're going to honor you, but hey, I got some information for you. It says, your majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold. And that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. this is where they're gonna get what they wanted, right? I'm gonna go tattle on you, and I'm gonna see you thrown into a furnace, like ha ha ha, right? But guess what? It says, but there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. And now they're gonna name their names, right? They're like, first we're gonna be, quiet, but now I'm gonna tell you the real details, right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. They made this personal, right? They say, these people, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't pay attention to you. They don't even care what you're telling them to do. When you told them to go bow down, they weren't doing it. Do you know that's happening in your land? Yeah? So here we go. Nebuchadnezzar, furious with rage. Here we are. This guy rages a lot. He's got a lot of issues. Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Come here, let's have a chat. Let's see what's really going on here. I'm gonna give you a chance to tell me otherwise, but if not, you know what's gonna happen. And he says, now when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? You remember last week in chapter 1? Did God rescue them from his hand? No, he didn't. Nebuchadnezzar got to go into their land, their temple, their most holy place, and he took artifacts from the holy temple back to his temple. Remember, it was like that move of, whose holy things are in whose temple now? Not yours. They're in mine. And on top of that, I'm going to take with me, who did they take? The best and the brightest. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel. They were taken. So it says, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? He's thinking, no one's going to rescue you. They didn't rescue you before. Look, you're in my land. You think your God's going to rescue you? It's not going to happen. But this is where it gets real good. It says in verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. We do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. The God we serve is able to deliver us from it. And they go on to say, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But this is where it's really good. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. We will not worship your gods or the image of gold you have set up. These were the best and brightest youth of Israel. They were taught the law since they were youngins. The second commandment says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them. The second commandment that they learned since they were young boys was that they would not have anyone before God. They would not bow down to them, literally, in the law, right? It says that. We will not. We will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious. Man, see, he's mad again, right? He's no longer buddy-buddy with these guys that, he's given them higher positions in his land. Now, this is personal. I gave you, these opportunities, and now you're going to do this to me? I told you that you're going to bow down to this idol, this image, and you're going to tell me no? Mm-mm. He was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. Think he's mad? Right? Like, a fire is already hot. If you throw someone in a fire, they're already going to get burned up. But, 7 times hotter? He's trying to make a point. And he said, and he commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So first, he's mad, so he's going to show you, I heated up that fire for you. Now, you think you're tough? Look, I'm going to send out my toughest men, and they're going to bound you. They're going to wrap you up, secure you, and you can't fight. That's it, right? But did you think that they were going to be fighting anyways by what they said before? No, they had this resolve that said, literally, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. They're done. They've made their decision. They're not going to change. So was it really necessary for them to be tied up and bound and thrown in like that? Probably not. But people do crazy things when they're angry. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent. Man, how many of you have ever made a bad decision when you're angry? Right? It's real quick. It says, I'm not going to wait around. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and that's it. Yep. So the king's command was urgent, and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They weren't even thrown into the fire. They're just standing next to it. And they're done. They're toast. And these 3 men, firmly tied, there's this emphasis, have you noticed it yet? In verse 20, it says they are tied up. In verse 21, it said they were bound. And once again, there's this emphasis that they are firmly tied, and they fell into the blazing furnace. This is real fun. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw in the fire? Like, am I seeing things? Am I crazy? Sometimes, when you're angry, you don't see things straight. It doesn't look like he's seeing straight right now, but he asked, and he says, certainly, your majesty. He said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire. Walking around. I could just imagine, how crazy it would have been for them. Now they're thrown into the fire, and they're like, whoa, I'm not getting burned up. This is fun. I could just, see them doing some dances like, haha, you tried to get me, but you didn't, look at that. That'd be pretty funny to me. But they're walking around, and guess what? They're unbound and unharmed. So back in 21, when it says that they're wearing robes and trousers, turbans, and other clothes, in 25 it says they're unharmed. And guess what? And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. Who's in there with them? Now, scholars say different things about whether it was an angel or if it was the presence of, God himself or whatnot. But whatever it was, there's someone in the fire, right? There wasn't someone in the fire before they were thrown in. But there was someone when they were in the fire. And that seems to be making the difference, right? In verse, in verse 15 at the end, it says, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Well, it looks like they're being rescued, not by King Nebuchadnezzar, but by their God, the one true God. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, listen to this, servants of the Most High God. King Nebuchadnezzar, with all his gods in Babylon, makes this statement, servants of the Most High God. Come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Man, when you're just sitting around the campfire, do you smell like fire? Yeah. I'm like, well, we're roasting marshmallows, but you go back into the camper later on, you're like, oh my gosh, I smell like a marshmallow. You know, I've been sitting out here long enough. But here, nothing. No smell, nothing's burned, but yet the guys that threw them in, they're dead. They didn't even make it next to the fire. These guys that were thrown into the fire are unharmed. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, this is kind of funny because this is King Nebuchadnezzar, be cut into pieces, and their houses shall be turned into piles of rubber. You think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were like, thanks, but like, we don't need you to, cut anybody into pieces, and we don't need any houses into rubble. We're just okay here. Like, let's worship the one true God. That's, as good as it should be. But at the end of this, it says, then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So, I would say, if you're not a Christian, that this story may sound, crazy, like a fairy tale, because how many times do you hear of really people in the U.S. being thrown into the fire and, surviving? That's really doesn't happen. And if it does, it's a miracle, but it's not like happens on an everyday basis. I think, looking back in time at, biblical times and how things were handled, kings could be pretty crazy and they can do as they wanted. We have Jesus, the Son of God, being crucified on a cross. We don't do that today, right? If you stand up for what you believe in, that usually, those kind of things don't happen, right? Even in the New Testament, you don't have heads being cut off at birthday parties and, served on platters. That's not something that happens really when you stand up for what you believe in. Most of the time in the U.S., standing up for what you believe in may be more of an example of what you would see on some college campuses where, they have out their signs and they say, this is what we believe in. And then you have, police come into those places and try to settle them down. And if they're, get violent or whatnot, they'll take them away and hold them in prison. Usually they don't keep them for, very long, but that's really kind of the protocol. It's not, hey, you defied what I said with your beliefs, then this is what's going to happen. But this is what happened in this story. However, if we want to think of this more as spiritual connections, we all experience our own fires in life, right? We all experience things that are hard to endure. There are situations that test us in our trust of who God is. When situations look bleak in our lives. And so that's kind of how, when we read something like this, we can be like, oh, I can connect to that, not because I'm standing up for what I believe in and I'm going to get thrown into the fire. Oftentimes it's different. And so I was chatting with my husband and I was like, what would this look like in my own life? What is something that I have experienced in relation to something like this? And we were reminded of what it was like when I had first become pregnant with my son, Michael. And that was when I was at this church way back when in youth ministry. And after we did some genetic testing, they called us back in and they told us that, Michael had a very high chance of having Down syndrome, and so they wanted us to come into their offices so that they can have, this conversation with us about the possible options of what, is we could check and see. So being naive and kind of young, because I was like I don't even know how old I was, like 22, 23. Going into this office thinking like, oh, they're going to tell me more information about my baby, and then going and being like, oh, this is not like a normal conversation that you're trying to have with me. But literally sitting in that room with him where, the doctor behind a little desk comes and basically tells us, this is the percentage that we think that your child's going to have Down syndrome, and these are the things that we can do. We can perform like amniocentesis. We can do a little blood test. It's not going to guarantee 100% like that he would have Down syndrome or not, but it would give us a better understanding. And then the other, conversation that we weren't really expecting to have, but they were so willing to have with us was like, will you abort the baby? And I just remember being there like, oh my gosh, like, what? Like, here I am, newly pregnant, few weeks into this, and now you're having these really hard conversations with me, and I don't even feel old enough to have these conversations. Like, what? Like, okay, I didn't know this is where we're going. But being in that room and having that conversation and just hearing like, do you want to abort your baby? And I just felt like, wow, all of those things that, I had learned from a child, valuing life and all of that, and just like my convictions as a Christian and coming into that place and being like, it's not an option. Like, whether or not he has Down syndrome or not, I'm still going to have this baby. And that may well be very difficult to have a child that has special needs, but that doesn't mean that it's not, worth it. It doesn't mean that that's not how God can, grow our family. It doesn't mean that's not how we would be blessed in our family with having children. And I felt at that moment of that feeling of, this is really a test of my faith, because all of the things that you believe and know to be true, when you actually enter something that's a test, you don't really know what to do. Like, after having that conversation, even though I knew that I had resolved, yes, I'm going to continue on in this pregnancy, there were so many people, from this church before that had just prayed over us. And, I think even you were in my life group at that time, or small group or something. And just coming and, praying over me that God would just give us whatever we needed in the season to come. And it was that was something that was really, life-altering feeling for me. And Michael, like you've seen him, he wasn't born with Down syndrome and all of that, but God really had to show up and be real for us to walk through that. And I was thinking about this too, air out some laundry. But a few years, you've seen Nico running around here. A few years ago, Nico, we have a basement in our house, and Nico had fallen down the stairs. He had just barely learned to crawl. I don't even think he was like 8, 9 months old. I don't know. It was in November, like 2 years ago. And he had fallen down the stairs, and my husband comes running with him, holding him, like, oh my gosh, we call 911. They come in, they have him, they're checking him and whatever, and they take us to Chalk, and like, we're sitting in that room, and Nico's on top of me, and they're running a bunch of tests, like telling me whether or not there's anything that's going to be wrong with him. I don't know, but just that fear of like, wow, things can really change in a blink of an eye. And the faith that we have really becomes true, and kind of, like all the impurities are burned out when we are tested in the fire. When God, brings us to places or seasons that we wouldn't have wanted to be in on our own. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't want to be in a fire, but they knew what they believed, and they were holding true to that. And it was in the fire, which I found really interesting, that the only thing that was burned in the fire was what they were bound by. And isn't that true for us, that like the things that we are bound by when we are tested in the fire are the things that God wants to burn up? And he didn't just throw you in the fire and God could have just burned him up and he couldn't have had his presence known in there. But he made his presence known in the fire, and everybody that was watching got to experience the testimony that came from that. I think sometimes we think that we'd rather be spared the hardship, or we want to keep things private and we want to just do things on our own. But sometimes that's not how God really works. God's going to do what God needs to do, whether you really like it or not, right? But when we come out of those fires in our lives, we come out stronger than we were before. Now, in a room, this size, I will say there's probably a chunk of you that are going through some kind of fire right now, whether that's financially, whether that's at home in your marriage, whether that's with a sickness or depression or anxiety. There's a lot of different fires that people can have in their lives. And chances are, if you're not going through a fire right now, you will at some point. It's inevitable. That's kind of what happens in life. God is not just about the easy, good things for you. He's also about, the burning up of the stuff that is not needed, burning up of the stuff that he wants to grow you in. He wants to change you. He wants to do all those things. But it's not... my sister always told me this. It's everything that you go through, it's never in vain. God's not a God that's just hey, I want to punish you, so this is why life is like that. It's never in vain. There's always a purpose to what you're going through, what you're experiencing. Sometimes it's for your own personal growth, but sometimes it's for those that are watching to be able to learn and to grow from what you've experienced. Because in this story, at the end of it, you have an onlooker, King Nebuchadnezzar, that comes to make this statement about your God is the one true God, right? I see it. So then the prayer would be that now that Nebuchadnezzar sees it, that he would want to change parts of his life, that he would want to come to know the one true God in an intimate relationship. He would want to know more about who he is. But we don't see that. King Nebuchadnezzar makes the acknowledgement, and he goes and he moves on. But that's not the purpose of that. Our faith should be in God's ability to move, not just in the desired outcome. We should have the knowledge of who he is and have the faith that God can do something, but it doesn't matter if he gives us a yes or a no or a wait. The faith is in who God is alone. God doesn't have to listen to our demands. The things that we want happen. I think one of these common phrases these days is you manifest it. I'm just going to speak it into the world and it's going to become. I'm going to say I want a big mansion, a big mansion, a big mansion. And all of a sudden one day I'm going to have a big mansion. It doesn't happen like that, right? Can't just think good thoughts and all of a sudden things happen, right? God doesn't have to bend to our desires, and his will may not be the same as what we think our will is. Sometimes we need that fire to refine us, to bring us back in alignment with what his will is. But this is a really beautiful thing, and I'll end on this, is that the results, like, they don't define the relationship with God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, let me read it exactly. King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. If, like, God could have said, no, I'm not going to show up in that fire. He could have let them wait, but if he waited, they would be burned up. But he entered into that with them. But I think sometimes we have to check our hearts and reposition ourselves to be in a place of, no matter what the outcome is in our following of Jesus, we have resolved to continue to follow him. When things don't always go our way, sometimes things get harder. Sometimes we, experience things that we don't want to experience. Sometimes that happens, but it doesn't change who God is. It doesn't change the fact that he loves you. It doesn't change the fact that he sent his son to die for you. It doesn't change the fact that he wants to be in a relationship with you. It doesn't. But sometimes we have to change our hearts and our expectations of what we are expecting God to do. Because sometimes we get hurt when we feel like God didn't show up, God didn't come through. It didn't turn out how I wanted it to happen. It didn't go this way. But like I said, everything we experience is never in vain. There's always a purpose to it. There was a purpose to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego entering the fiery furnace. There was a purpose in seeing the presence of God there with them. There was the purpose behind the fact that all of these people were watching. There was a purpose in King Nebuchadnezzar making, the command that, anybody speaks against these people again, which they did. They spoke against them. There was a purpose in that, in the sense that, they now have a freedom they didn't have before. And so my challenge today, as we enter back into worship, would just be to focus on this. I'm going to invite Susie down for prayer. Where would you go? And you. And usually we have prayer in the back, but I wanted to give some time for you guys to kind of enter into this space of thinking about and praying that God would just show you. Are there things that you need God to burn off? Some of you struggle with, depression or anxiety. Some of you have addictions that you may be hiding. Some of you are experiencing sickness that that you need prayer over. And I don't want you to come to church today and just say, wow, Chelsea just really, did a good job. She gave a sermon. I want you to spend some time actually talking to God and allowing him to speak back to you. And so during this time, those, that need prayer, I want you to come and get prayer. Like, this is supposed to be a house of prayer. This is supposed to be a place that we can come and we can share the things, the fires in our lives, and that we can have community with one another so that we can actually leave this place changed, feeling lighter. The Bible says that his burden is light. So when you come here, if you have a burden, let's unload a little bit of it so that you can go forth from here lighter than you came. All right, where's Kirk? Kirk, can you come back down? And those that I said to pray, if you come down to the front. And he's just going to play some background music for a bit, so give some space for that. And we're just going to spend some time talking to Jesus. So I'm going to close this right now in prayer. God, I just want to stop for a minute and just pause. God, we thank you for the privilege it is to meet here together. God, life can be so hard in a lot of different ways. And we can become so just weighed down by the burden of it all, God. But you say that the burden is supposed to be light. And it's light because you are there with us. God, we thank you for your presence in our fires, in our struggles, in the things that in life that are hard. We thank you for your presence, and we just acknowledge it right now, God. God, I thank you for this time. God, would you just speak to the hearts of those that are in this room right now, God? For those that need a word from you, God, would you just speak so clearly? God, may we leave here changed. May we leave here lighter than when we came. If there's some of you in this room that need prayer, please come down to the front and we would love to pray with you. I'm going to pray over depression. I feel like it continues to press. So God, I just pray that if there's anyone in this room that's experiencing depression, God, that you would just speak so intimately to their heart and to their mind right now. That you would show them that they are seen and that they are known and that they are loved. And I pray that you would lift the cloud over them, God. The heaviness of it. God, that you would send people around them, God, to lift them up, to encourage them, to strengthen them. That you would give them a community, God. For those in this room that do not have a community, that are feeling lonely or feeling unseen, God, I pray that that's something that you would give. That you encourage their heart. That you would remind them of how much you love them, God, that you see them, that they're not overlooked. God, we thank you that we do not have to go through these things alone, God, that you are there with us. And I know sometimes that feels like it's not enough. In the realness of that, God, sometimes it doesn't feel like it's enough. Sometimes we feel like we're grasping at things, God. And sometimes we ask for those concrete things, God, those concrete, people that just come around and just hug us, God. Would you just wrap those that may be experiencing depression or loneliness in a big hug, that they would just feel your arms surround them right now, God. God, we speak to those that may be experiencing sickness or health issues in this room, God. We ask for your healing touch to come upon them, God, that you would meet them where they're at, that you would send doctors, nurses, whoever it is to help them, God, that you would give them relief. That nothing is too small, God, for your healing touch. Nothing's too big, God, that you are the God of miracles, that you can do the impossible. As we come to a close, I'm going to have Kirk lead us in I Have Decided to Follow Jesus. If you would stand with us to sing that, that'd be great, and we'll end in a cappella so that we can hear all of your beautiful voices.
Follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. Though none go with me, I still will follow. Though none go with me, I still will follow. Though none go with me, I still will follow. No turning back, no turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back.
So, Father, we thank you for this time that you've given us to learn more about who you are. Chelsea provided this incredible opportunity through the Holy Spirit, giving us a chance to allow you to burn off anything in our lives that we don't need. And Lord, I would strongly encourage everybody here, as you're leaving, just spend time with the Holy Spirit. Say, Lord, is there anything else, anything that I need to let go of, that I need to lay down before you, that I need you to burn out of my life? And you know, he'll do that in a joyous way. No condemnation, no guilt. But he'll meet you right where you are. So we thank you for this evening, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.